Good evening and welcome to tonight's P&Z meeting, Wednesday, July 9th, 2025. First on the menu here is approval of our minutes from June 25th. You guys see any issues? Go over those. Any issues, corrections, deletions?
Good to me. Move to approve.
Have a motion to approve
Second.
and a second by Nels. We'll do a roll call vote. Sue?
Abstain, I was sick.
Joel?
Aye.
I'll abstain. I was not here.
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain.
Okay, so if there's only four, is that good or what? Is that good enough?
Well, abstains
Five.
count.
We need five.
Well,
1.
1, 2, 3, 4.
need 5 voters. It doesn't matter if you abstain or.
Oh, perfect. Okay, well, we move on then. Motion approved. Next is a public comment, general public comment, where we allow the public 15 minutes to speak on matters not on the agenda nor currently pending before the Planning and Zoning Commission. We welcome anyone to come down that wants to talk to us about whatever. You ready? You're good? Okay, we're good. We're going to move on to number 3, the public hearing for a proposal for a preliminary subdivision plat and preliminary plan unit development for a parcels located at 2300 block of Augustine Avenue within the city of Moscow, known as Augustine Avenue Apartments Addition. Mike?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. So before you tonight, we have a PUD and a preliminary subdivision plat proposal for the Augustine Avenue Apartments project. And this is the subject property, a little over 4 acres in size. It's bisected by Augustine Avenue, so it contains essentially 2 properties. They don't have a dividing line here, but there's actually 4 parcels, so 2 on the west side and 2 on the east side. But they're highlighted in red at the center of your screen. This photo is a little outdated. Those roads are currently constructed, so the Eddington First Edition has been constructed. So Augustine Avenue and Eddington Avenue, all the infrastructures, street, curb gutter, sidewalk, tree lawns have all been constructed, as well as the alleys at the rear of the properties that loop around here. You can kind of see the configuration of the parcels and the streets in that area. Looking in the area, you have the city park property here to the north and to the east. This is the South Fork of the Palouse River going through the property here, the city park property here to the north, Palouse River Drive, and then the Arboretum here to the northeast. So just a closer view of the current properties. There's a couple of outbuildings currently on the westerly parcel over here. So the applicant's impact investors, they're proposing the preliminary subdivision plat and the PUD of 4 parcels located at 2300 Augustine Avenue. So the plat's 4.06 acres. The proposal is to create 10 parcels ranging from 5,500 square feet to 7,407 square feet in size, and 2 large common area tracts referred to as the Augustine Avenue Apartments Addition. And then the PUD contains a mixed-use development with 10 buildings comprised of 114 dwelling units and 16 commercial live-work units, as well as an existing commercial shop that they're planning on retaining on the property. So looking at the comp plan designation, it's urban residential, actually high-density residential, excuse me. Auto-urban residential is the yellow shade that surrounds the property, located within Eddington First Edition as well. You've got parks and open space for the city park property here to the east. So high density residential in the comp plan allows the highest density residential development at common densities between 15 and 26 units per acre. Appropriate areas for the designation include those located adjacent to areas of higher activity where there's a range of uses. Should be located adjacent or in close proximity to designated arterial or collector streets. And then new areas should be located near mixed-use activity areas and corridors that accommodate multimodal transportation. And then it points to the R3, R4, RO zoning districts as the appropriate designations. Brings us to the zoning configuration of the area. Residential office is the subject property, as well as the properties in Eddington First Edition here across Augustine, and then transitions to the R3 designation within Eddington First Edition, as well as property that was platted for Eddington Estates, but never proceeded to the final plat stage. So that's null and void for that subdivision plat over there, but the property is still R3. So the RO zone, moderate intensity, includes both offices and high-density housing, serves as a transitional zoning district between residential zoning districts and commercial or industrial zoning districts, appropriately applied in the following circumstances: on the perimeter of commercial or industrial districts where they abut residential land uses, where the transportation network use is greater than desirable for lower density residential uses, and where landforms create sites which are reasonably accessible by transportation systems and which are buffered from nearby residential areas, and where development patterns in a neighborhood will allow development of moderate intensity to occur without producing adverse visual impact or harm to the transportation network. So really a wide range of residential uses permitted within the RO zone, anywhere between single family all the way to multifamily, twin homes, townhouses. Some commercial, limited commercial services as well, like veterinary services, professional offices, restaurants up to 1,500 square feet in size, group and small childcare facilities, community neighborhood centers, healthcare services, public parks, rec facilities, telecom services, personal care services, and bed and breakfasts. Brings us to the preliminary plat of Augustine Avenue Apartments Edition. So we'd gone over 10 parcels here, and then 2 tracts, which are the common areas, which include, we'll get to this, but parking areas, open space, landscaping, as well as stormwater detention within those common tracts. So this is the preliminary plat the applicant has submitted. You can see the 10 landlocked parcels located at various areas of the subdivision. So these are the 2 properties to the west and the 2 properties to the east. And then they're further subdividing these, and this will make a little bit more sense when we get to the PUD, which are intended to divide ownership of those buildings that are planned on being built in the PUD. So it's a mixed-use development, includes residential and commercial uses. There's 10 buildings, 114 dwelling units, 16 of those are commercial spaces, and 1 existing commercial shop building. And this is the site plan for the PUD that's been submitted. So you can see these are all building footprints, and these are located on those individual lots. They have 2 types of buildings as far as the floor plans, and then we'll go through. The facades are a little bit different on each of those buildings, and there's different options there. But essentially you have 6 buildings on the west side and 3 on the east, with the existing shop building making 10. And then this is the parking lot, which serves the entire development on the west, and then parking lot located to the east. And then there's parking located off the existing alley, and then a small parking lot here. The dark around the existing buildings there represents the sidewalks, accessible route that extends to each of these buildings. So it's multifamily, residential, and commercial. So all the buildings are required to be on an accessible route, ADA parking spaces, as well as the public sidewalk. Stormwater detention pond is proposed to be located in this area. And this gives you a little bit more detail as far as the types of buildings. So you have a 10-plex, and that's the purple rectangles, and then the Alfred buildings, which are the green rectangles, and then the existing commercial space is the yellow. So you can see the Alfreds are grouped closer to the street. Those are the buildings that contain some commercial on the ground floor up against Augustine Avenue street frontage. And then you transition to the 10 plexes, which are completely residential in those locations. So this brings us to the 10 unit. So there's 4 2-bedroom apartments, 2 1-bedroom apartments, and 4 studio apartments in each one of the buildings. So a little bit different of a configuration. So you have an internal hallway here, and then you have access to 1-bedroom apartments on the first floor. And then on the second floor, there'll be studio apartments. And then these units here on the side are actually more of an up-down townhouse configuration. So the living space would be on the first floor, and bedrooms up on the second. Yeah.
So you can't see the bottom. Isn't the bottom, that top says ground floor? Bottom one.
Yeah, this is the ground floor here, and this would be the second floor here.
Okay,
So
'cause
yeah, you have some living area, and then the kitchen area, bathroom, and then the top floor is going to be 2 bedrooms. So these are the stairs. So these are up, down, more of a townhouse configuration. So you'd enter from the exterior, have the living space and the kitchen space, and then you'd go up the stairs for the 2 bedrooms. So that'd be more of a townhouse style configuration as opposed to multifamily. Brings us to the exterior elevations. So the applicant's proposing a few different facade articulations and essentially different options for the facades for the 2 proposed buildings. And so you can see kind of the top, a little bit more articulation to it, gabled roofs, and then the second option there. And then there's a third option and a fourth option as well. That brings us to the Alfred. So this is 3 stories in height. And this would be the ground floor here. So you can see these are live workspaces. So these are the commercial spaces. These 2 are commercial. These 2 are commercial here. There's a studio apartment here and here. And it brings you up to the second and third floors have the same building footprint. So really just a mixture of 2 bedrooms. So there's 4 2-bedroom apartments and 12 studio apartments contained within the Alfred. And as with the 10 unit, there's a few different facade options to choose from. Three in total there. And then the existing commercial shell building, planning on renovating that. And they have a explanation here, shop structure to be improved to vanilla shell to accommodate a tenant improvement for business use as permitted in the residential office zone. Immediate intended use would be as a professional property management office is what they've indicated for this. And then they provided some renderings about, what at least the west side would look like. So this is from Augustine looking to the southwest. The Alfred buildings in the front, transitioning to the 2-story 10 units in the rear. And then this is the commercial shop space there. Then some images from different locations. So this would be looking to the northwest. This is Augustine as well, looking to the northwest, coming into the parking lot here. This would be looking to the property to the east, so down the alley. This would be the parking lot located over here for the property to the east. So this brings us to the landscape plan that's been submitted. So typically landscaping around the parking areas. So it's a 3-foot buffer, tree every 40 feet, shrub every 6 feet. And then they've indicated that there's a substantial area intended for xeriscaping. And so that's the symbol for xeriscaping. So the entire kind of west side, some in between the buildings, and then some locations surrounding the property there to the east. Brings us to the base density requirements. So residential office, it's 24 dwelling units per acre for the base density. Based upon the 4.06 acres of the property, that equates to 97 dwelling units base density. 114 dwelling units are proposed, which results in the need for an 18% density bonus that would need to be required. So looking at the density bonus that the applicant has proposed, the first one is a mix of housing types and uses. You can get a 10% maximum bonus for this. It really states that any combination of single-family, duplex, multifamily residences, and or commercial, institutional, or civic uses may qualify. So the applicants included really a range of various sizes and configurations of the multifamily dwellings, and also incorporated commercial spaces on the ground floor of facing Augustine Avenue street frontage. And so it's staff recommendation that a 5% density bonus should be awarded for this category. Next one is sustainable development practices, 8% maximum bonus for this category. Applicants propose the following measures: enhanced outside air ventilation, exhaust vents, and superior HVAC air filtration, which shall exceed minimum code requirements. walk-off mats, no attached garages, and the use of low VOC paint and carpeting. And then with those, it's staff's recommendation that a 4% bonus should be awarded in that category. Alternative transportation, 2% maximum bonus, incorporating bus shelters, turnouts, alternative fuel vehicle support facilities, carpool lots, pedestrian paths, bike racks, etc. Could achieve the maximum 2% density bonus. Applicants propose secure bicycle parking racks with sheltered charging ports for e-bikes, designated areas for ride sharing as well. And so about half of the bicycle parking appears to be covered with standalone structures, some inside the buildings. Staff's recommendation that a 1% bonus should be awarded for this proposal. Water saving features is the next category. There's a 10% maximum bonus that could be awarded. Bonuses may be awarded if stormwater reuse and xeriscaping is incorporated. The applicant is including xeriscaping with native and drought tolerant plants, high efficiency irrigation systems, and potentially a stormwater reuse system for landscaping. Staff's recommendation that a 5% bonus should be awarded in this category. And then the last one, I believe, other functional or aesthetic development features could be 10% maximum. The arrangement of parking such that it is not located within the required front nor street side yard, or such that is located behind or underneath the buildings and not readily visible from the street. So the parking, this proposal is designed to be located typically behind those buildings, at least on the west side. So it's not readily visible from the street, would enhance the streetscape and overall aesthetic of the development. Although the development on the east side has the parking lot in front. And so with that, staff's recommendation would be that just a 4% density bonus should be awarded in that category for that. Looking at our total of all the categories brings us up to 19% for recommended bonus density. So needed 18% to be achieved. And so that would exceed that. Brings us to the street network. Augustine Avenue is a collector. So there's sidewalks, curbing, and bike lanes on both sides of the street with no on-street parking. The off-street parking for this proposed development, 192 spaces are required. 198 are provided. That includes 6 ADA accessible spaces, and 88 bike parking spaces are provided. Like I mentioned before, some of those are sheltered, some are non-sheltered. Water mains are going to be extended, so they're already in Augustine Avenue. They'll just be looped through the development. Engineering's determined that the existing system has adequate potable fire flows to serve the proposed subdivision. Same with sanitary. Those are proposed to be extended from Augustine Avenue, as well as the alley to the north of Eddington Avenue. For those services, engineering departments determined that the existing system's adequate capacity to accommodate that proposed subdivision. And then storm sewer will need to be piped and directed to the stormwater detention pond located on the western portion of the development. And of course, we'll need to meet stormwater detention requirements, which require the stormwater to be detained at the pre-development rate. Parkland dedication, 4.06 acres of net developable land, so 9% for the residential office zone, equates to 0.25 acre dedication requirement. Applicants propose to defer the parkland dedication to a later phase of the Eddington subdivision, which was previously approved for the Eddington First Edition. So the property on the east side of Augustine is already in Eddington First Edition. So that's already been deferred. It's just the property on the west that would need to add additional subdivision, parkland dedication requirement to be deferred. And so that's our Parks and Facilities Manager's recommendation to defer the parkland to a future phase of Eddington addition there to the east and southeast. And the Parks and Rec Commission is going to consider the request at their upcoming meeting on July 24th. So with that, staff recommends the commission conduct the public hearing, and upon consideration of testimony received, recommend approval of the proposed PUD with no conditions, and then recommend approval of the proposed preliminary plat with one condition, that the applicant be required to submit a stormwater report for the proposed subdivision and include any mitigation actions necessary to ensure that the stormwater facilities will have no downstream adverse impacts subject to the approval of the city engineer. And of course, in accordance with the commission's decision on the PUD and plat, direct staff to prepare the RCS documents. I'd certainly try to answer any questions you had.
Hey, y'all have any questions for Mike? Anyone?
Mike, on the density bonus, is there any means for the city to verify that they're complying with what they're proposing?
Yeah, typically when they submit building plans, there's been other developments that have utilized this. And it's generally at the building permit stage that they have to, Justin will check whether or not, maybe it's a greater insulation requirements, but they would have to submit the specs on the equipment in order to verify that it's going to meet, exceed
That's through
codes.
Justin then.
Yeah, yep. Yeah, we usually work with the building department to make sure that they're going to exceed, what they say they're going to exceed as far as the code requirements.
Yeah, Sue.
These I see are two separate items, so we could approve the PUD and not necessarily approve the plat. They're separate items.
Well, they're pretty much intertwined. So you could approve the PUD, but it wouldn't be subdividing the property like the intention is.
What about I'm sorry, I can't hear very well.
So the intention is to subdivide the property. So, the PUD,
That part's fine.
yeah, essentially, it's a residential office zone. You'd be able to do this development without going through a PUD, but they've chosen to do that in order to subdivide the lot into individual buildings.
Well, I will have a lot of questions about the preliminary plat, so I don't know that I would be willing to approve the PUD part without approving the preliminary and including the preliminary plat.
What are your questions on the plat?
Oh, I got lots of them. My first one was about, and I sent this to your office today, is on the floodway. What year was the last designation of the flood zone? Because looking at, and I've read recently that designated flood zones are not up to date with current weather, as you could just see in the local recent national problems. So, because I look at the way when they have a building like right up against the floodway, and if it were to flood, if the actual current weather situations were to flood that, would the city at all be liable? Because we could say, well, we approved it because the floodway was right there. It wasn't in the flood zone, but it's like right on it.
Well, we have floodplain development requirements in the city, so we have a whole
Right.
chapter
When was
that-
that last determined where the line was?
Well, so we've updated various other areas of town, but it was 2002 is essentially the date of our flood insurance rate map. It was probably mid 70s since this area was last mapped.
That
But-
concerns me.
So yeah, FEMA, as far as the STAR update, they're actually going through a remapping of all Latah County right now, which should be complete in the next year or two. And so we're hopefully going to be getting updated maps within the next couple years. But this is the data that you have to go off of. The property is not in the floodway. The floodway is down here. There's a line that goes through the
The
100-year.
line is, if you look at their map, the
No.
floodway line is right up
Yes.
against. Anyway, that was my first question,
Yeah.
but go ahead. You see the line of the lot,
Okay.
not the building, but the lot.
Which sheet are you referring to?
The second map in our packet shows both the original flood fringe, flood and the floodway. The.
Is floodway the same thing as flood zone?
No,
It's not.
no. You can't build in the floodway unless you have a no-rise certification. 100-year floodplain you can build in, you have to elevate the structures 2 feet above the base flood elevation. So there was a property that recently received a elevation certificate, Hill House, in order to construct a residential care facility here to the north. And they've done fairly substantial earthwork and grading on these properties to elevate those, so they don't have to elevate the structure themselves. And so based upon the base flood elevation that we have on file and the elevation of the lowest floor of that structure that was going to be constructed essentially on grade, it was 10 feet above the base flood elevation. And their engineer could certainly
Okay, that's
speak to
the first
that
question.
a little more.
Well, yeah, this is my problem of separating issues on the plat from, I perfectly am happy with that to be a PUD, but I have issues with the plat, and that's why I wanted to know if we could separate them.
I mean, you need to approve the PUD before you can approve the plat.
Right.
Because there's deviations in that.
Right?
But they could build this today without going through a PUD or a plat. It's only to divide the property into separate ownership is the reason why they're going through this. So we have floodplain development requirements, requires it to be 2 feet above base flood elevation, and that's anywhere in the city that you build that you're in a floodplain. So any other properties, within this subdivision have the same requirements regardless of whether they go through this process to divide each individual building or not.
Go ahead, Sue. You got the
As long as we're
floor.
doing questions. On the two Alfreds, on one of your colored plats, it had 3 Alfreds, but on these, it has the 2 Alfreds and a 10 unit next to it. So lot, is it 5 and 1 are Alfreds and 4 is a 10 unit? I'm trying to see which. My question is, legally, those are 2, yeah, the 2 Alfreds and the 10-plex. The side limit is, the required side limit is 5 feet. So it looks like between 4 and 5, you would have 10 feet. And 2 40-foot buildings, 10 feet apart. And so where are you going to put the snow? Because those are walkways designated under there. And yeah, that's one of my first questions is that, yes, it's legal, but is it sufficient and is it wise? So where are you going to put the snow?
You could certainly ask the applicant that. I wouldn't be maintaining the snow on the property.
Anything else? Joel, go ahead.
I have a question about the design of the Alfred buildings. I assume that for the building inspector to actually approve plans and so on is something that would happen in the future rather than at this point. But my question with the Alfreds is when I start counting the number of potential bedrooms on the second and third floor, I get 9 bedrooms on each floor. I count up stairways.
Studios.
There's 1 in the Alfred design.
Oh, a stairway to go to the second
Stairway
floor?
to go from the first floor to
Well,
the second and third.
If you look at the 2-bedroom ones
Yeah.
that have up and down, they have
Well,
interior.
those are the 10 units.
Interior.
The Alfred units have one single stairway to, by my count, accommodate 16 bedrooms. I would worry about the legal liability of the owners of this structure.
Well, the building will undoubtedly have to be sprinkled.
What's that?
Fire sprinkler system would have to be installed, but building code would dictate, all those requirements.
Okay. So it's legal.
Oh.
I would say it probably shouldn't be, but
And my other issue is that you have it required 192 parking spaces and it's provided is 198, but no on-street parking. So there are only 6 parking spots for guests for all of those people, for all those apartments. That's why I like separating the PUD from them.
But we can't add requirements.
Hmm?
I mean, if they meet the requirements, they meet the
Yeah,
requirements.
oh yeah, they do.
I mean,
I don't know if I like it though.
I'm stuck on what Joel is talking about. I can't figure what he's talking about in the steps and why you're concerned. What's the concern there?
I'm just visualizing what would happen with 16 bedrooms above if there were a fire event.
That's exit. Okay, any more questions for Mike? Anyone? All right, Mike, thank you.
Yeah.
And with that, we'll open up for the applicant, I guess. Yeah. Open up the public comments. We'll start with the applicant.
Hello, my name is Scott Sumner, 106 South Hayes in Moscow. I'm speaking for the applicant. I'm the civil engineer on the project. I will not be very much help on the building side of it because I don't do a whole lot of building, but I'll answer as best I can any of the questions that you have. This development really started with housing. It's one of the things that we hear around town. And a lot of people talk about single family housing, but there's a lot of different types of housing and people that need to be able to find homes and move to the area. We think this is an opportunity as you transition through the Eddington development, going from apartments to townhomes, and then you start working in the single family homes. It is a natural transition that most cities and zoning allows and works with and wants the natural transitional flow of housing that you're looking for. You're not going to put giant apartments by 2-acre houses. And so this is something that we think fits the area of the development. I will speak on the floodway and the floodplain. The floodway and floodplain are similar, but they are 2 separate items. The floodway is really where the water travels. And then where Mike was saying it's a no rise situation. So anything you put in the floodway cannot cause the water to rise because that could flood people downstream or upstream. The floodplain is is outside that floodway, and that's like a lake. So if you build something in it, it's more just standing water where water pools up. So with any development, as Mike said, within the floodplain, you're allowed to develop it as long as the water is going to be higher than that floodplain elevation. With the Eddington subdivision, there's been a lot of grading and, over 50 years since the 70s, since they mapped it, there's been development throughout the area. But it's all based on elevation. So when they draw those floodplain maps, they have in the 70s, they had big crayon marks that they drew on the maps and said, this is roughly that elevation. But that doesn't necessarily mean that's the floodplain. It's really, as the ground changes, it's really based on that elevation. So as we've developed these, they'll still have to go through the floodplain permit because the floodplain hits this property. So it'll go through the FEMA regulations, the city of Moscow's regulations. So we'll be covered in terms of how these will be permitted and insured through that. The city would have no liability or expectations of repercussions by approving this. It's a pretty natural aspect of development and process that the city and developers go through. So I want to make sure that's something that maybe not clear. Some of those words get interchanged quite a bit, and I want to make sure it's clear of how that process works. As far as snow removal, I would say, as with any apartments, most of them hire. I would have to speak to the owners on how they intend to hire it, but I imagine they're on site facilities will be taking the snow removal and pushing it to wherever it goes when we do have snow. As you mentioned, climate is changing, and I know last year we did not nearly get the snow that we have in years past or in other things, but we still would have processes in place because people live there. I mean, nobody wants to build a complex where people are having issues or snow issues or parking issues. People, especially this development, they're not doing it to be the cheapest and gouge people and do the bare minimum. They put in their homework, and they're doing things that they hope will enhance the area and not just be a detraction and stuff as many people in a cracker box as they can. The mixed use has been brought about because as you continue to build out here, there's a huge need for smaller localized areas that you can find services. So hopefully with this, it's going to be a long time before there's enough people out there to support some of this. But if you don't start planning and getting the process started, that's not going to happen. So this is part of getting more people out there along with the rest of the Eddington development and this side of town to be able to provide services that right now may not have a home or a place for. Stormwater, sewer, water, those are all things that we regularly go through with the city of Moscow. They check, they cross their T's, dot their I's, and make sure that we are adequate on all those aspects of it. That's a very regular part of the development. The only thing, and Mike hit on this, the only thing about this that is different than a normal, say, apartment project or a project that has gone around is the ownership structure. And that's why they wanted to do it as PUD. They wanted to provide an avenue for more people that are local to be able to be part of a development like this, as opposed to a out-of-town developer who comes in and builds 14 buildings. This is set up so, 10 different people can own these buildings instead of, which is more manageable for local people to own a building versus, or a group of people that own a building versus having to bite off the entire chunk. So the whole point of going through this process is to make it achievable for a local developer. I think that really hits on a lot of the points I think that you guys have brought up. And if there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
Hey, anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Victoria.
I'm rusty on studios, I guess. There's not a kitchen area identified, and I don't know what you do in a studio. I would hope not just a hot plate. But, because the rest of the buildings all have kitchen area identified. So I was just wondering what happens with the studios.
I will defer to the building plan.
I
I'm
would
not
say
sure
the
on those.
studio would have one wall of kitchen stuff.
I think
Yeah,
they
but
do.
It's not identified, and all the
no.
others are. So.
I believe that the studio is just it's similar to a one bedroom, but it's more of an open floor concept for the whole thing. Again, I apologize that I'm not up to the building aspect of it. But
Well, I kind of assumed there would have to be something.
there would be something, and it's something that would be people would be aware of before they moved in. There would be some kind of amenities that they would be signing up for.
Yeah.
Do not have the details on those fully. Mike.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, building code would dictate that you have to have full housekeeping facilities there. So they would have to have some type of cooking facilities, bathroom facilities, like that in order to be declared a dwelling. So yeah, it would have to have
Thank you.
permanent cooking facilities located within that area.
Yeah. As you say that rings a bell.
Yeah.
Yeah. Good. I'm assuming
Excuse me.
that if you have snow on those walks, you'll you'll have little plows that take it down toward the parking lot, and then you'll have to have a designated area there. Would be my assumption.
Yeah, or have it removed, whatever,
Or
whatever you have to do, yeah. Anyone else have any questions for Scott?
Oh, just following up what Mike said. So does this mean for a building permit that a studio would have to have wiring sufficient for a microwave and a small refrigerator? Because that's not, there'd have to be enough circuitry to do something.
Yeah, you would have to have full housekeeping facility. So,
So
you know,
that's-
a microwave is not a permanent cooking device, right? You can plug it in, take it out. I mean, you'd have to have a stove, some type of range for permanent cooking, as well as sink for water, be able to do dishes. But yeah, electrical connections in the kitchen sufficient to power a fridge. And
Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott? No, all right, thanks, man.
Awesome. Thank
Appreciate
you.
it. Okay, we'll open it up for anyone that is in favor of the project can come and speak. Try to limit it to 3 minutes for anyone. How about anyone for general comments?
I will be general because
Yeah, come up here and tell me your name, give us 3 minutes, address, and go from there.
I'm Doug Gadwa. I live at 1400 Sand Road, right kitty corner from this project. And I'm going to bring up one thing that I attended the meetings for the initial planning of this project. And those original zoning ordinances that went into effect from the original plan, people were in agreement with it. And now here we are a year and a half later, and we're coming in for a rezone. The timing is like, well, we just approved it for light industrial or whatever it was, but it was supposed to be stores, small stores, live-in businesses and something. And now we're turning it into 100 parking spots is what I counted on the drawing that I got. I am very, very concerned about the blind corner coming out of that piece of property. I don't know whether any of you know Grace and Leonard Hike. Many years ago, somebody came around that corner too fast and head on to Grace Hike. That's going to happen. Surely. The semi trucks are now hauling Timothy because that it doesn't have to go through the town of Pullman. That corner is solid rock. The owner of the property has no desire to sell it because they were not in a favor of the whole project. It needs to be solved. That problem needs to be solved. Whether it's the county right away is 10 more feet into the rock, it needs to be removed. If you have to do a forced sale of the property for safety's sake, that needs to be on the developer. Because somebody with a carload of kids is going to get clobbered coming out of that road right there. There's a new bridge project that is happening right there at that bridge. Right now, Germer has about 50 trips into that dump pit that he has. He's gotten fined for being over gross weight crossing that bridge. That is a dangerous corner. I am in agreement with what I was originally in agreement with, the original zoning of that property. I'm not. I said I'm going to be on the fence here, but there are some issues that need to be dealt with. And I can't figure out why there is an apartment building being built on the said property right prior to the zoning change. I think it's an apartment building, and these guys over here could probably tell me, but it certainly doesn't look like a shop. But I don't know, what are they building there that is already being constructed?
Which property are you referring to?
Pardon?
Which property are you referring to?
I'm referring to right across the road from my house.
The existing building?
The red triangle, basically right there.
On this property here?
Yes.
The most immediately adjacent to the river there?
Pardon?
The one that's closest to the river? As soon as you turn.
You know, it's really, I would probably say it's right where your orange or where your spot is there.
Okay.
I'm
That's
assuming it was a blessed building permit.
It's a residential care facility, Alzheimer's.
And
facility.
that fits the current zoning ordinances?
It does, yeah. There's no zone change proposed here.
Yeah, that's what I was.
This is all the same zoning that was approved previously. So
So we're not changing the zone, it's just because of there's multiple owners,
So this
right?
was all, yeah, there's no zone change. It's all residential office was the current zone. And then it transitions to R3 when, you know, you have the townhouses that are constructed here, transitions to single family. But yeah, this has already been zoned. There's no zone change here. It's just to allow for individual ownership of the buildings, the multifamily buildings.
So there's already been a approved zoning ordinance change that I wasn't aware of.
No, it was when it first went through. When this
Okay,
property
so
was
that
first-
is a blessed project on the current zoning that property is.
Well, this is the current zoning, but in order to, what they're proposing on these two properties here is to build 10 buildings and have individual ownership of those 10 buildings. But multifamily is allowed in residential office zones. So, you know, per the density, they could put 200 plus units on these two properties, but they've chosen to go through a plan unit development process in order to divide ownership on each of the buildings. Usually the parking drives the density. You know, it's 800 square feet per dwelling unit is what our code says. But typically it's only around 24 to 30 units per acre is what you can achieve with surface parking included.
In the drawing that got sent to me, I counted 100 parking spots. That was what was sent to me in the mail. Okay, let's take that 100 and we'll put it into that intersection right there. And I am worried that that is going to be another, and if it doesn't get solved, that rock pit turns into a safe blind spot or do away with the blind spot, you guys are going to end up feeling like he told me so. So I'm going to just throw up my hands and say, do whatever you guys think is right to make these guys happy and put in 100 parking spots and however many units that you're going to put in there. But I'm just saying, and you can see where I'm talking about the brown area, the tight corner there. There's all of about 75 feet prior to the turn. And people haul ass around that corner. So I'm good. I've had my 3 minutes. Well, 6. Thanks for giving me 6.
Thanks for your time. You're the only ones. We had some extra time. We appreciate you getting out. We appreciate your comments. I don't know exactly where he's talking about, Mike. Do you? At the corner there?
Around
Like
this
legit?
corner.
Right there.
Okay.
That is a 40-foot tall
Okay.
rock wall. And that used to be a rock pit where those buildings are right now. I mean, we're talking 40 years ago. And when it was blasted, the Olson's house got rocks through its roof.
Wow.
And believe it or not, this 2 years ago or a year ago, when they were putting in this road, they blasted And my house got a 13-pound rock through my roof. Maybe you guys remember that. Yes?
They do, yep.
They had blasting blankets that were not used, that were sitting there unused. My wife was pretty damn pissed because we had rocks from that blasting on our deck where my grandchild often is playing. So these guys building this nice new place here, they're going to find that they're going to have to do blasting in order to get foundations in. Have you guys drilled holes? So
Thank you. We appreciate it. We do. Appreciate your time.
good night.
Thank you.
Mike, so we're talking about Palouse River Drive and the Johnson Cutoff Road, I guess.
Yeah, it turns into Sand Road. I mean, this property's in the county, right? So
So, but who's responsible for that area? It's not these guys.
it's Latah County Highway District at this
Yeah,
point.
so they've looked at all that, haven't they? I mean, they'll look at all that and take care of it if it needs to be taken care of. I mean, it's not up to us to,
Yeah, the speed limit drops down, and then you have, I mean, our engineering department analyzed when they put the intersection out to Palouse River Drive. The bridge here will get replaced, like Mr. Gadwad had mentioned. But they looked at the sight distance coming out of this intersection, and it met, the engineering standards at the time the intersection was constructed for sight distance.
Dennis,
yes, Sue, go ahead.
is that at the state line or no?
It's not. The state line is further over this
Okay.
direction. This is
Okay.
just the city limits boundary here.
Mike,
Nelson.
did the gentleman who
Yeah,
spoke, is he in that AF, is that his
Right
property
here.
there?
Yep,
Yeah, he's next to the university barn then.
correct.
Yeah. Mhm.
Okay.
Well, living on the edge of the city causes painful changes for sure.
Sometimes, yeah. So I think that took care of the oppose as well. Would you like to come up and rebut anything or? Okay, I just had to ask, okay?
I'm not gonna have any more rocks going into people's roofs.
Well, we hope not.
I know that's not planned.
You have to,
Okay, well, with that, we'll close the,
He's answering.
Oh.
He's got questions.
oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I will say, going through the development, there's things that we design and there are things that contractors are responsible for. Blasting is one that there are blasting companies, they have their insurance, their requirements, and there's things that they go through. As developers, we do the best that we can to find the right people to do the right job and to do it the right way.
Sure.
And, you can't always, that's not always 100% successful. I mean, no one would ever want to say, hey, we want to blow rocks through people's houses.
Sure.
That's not the case. I mean,
Gotcha.
but there are rocks all over town, and there's things that you have to do to be able to keep developing on the outside of town to take care of those. So I understand his concerns about that. And on this one, there won't be any of that concern, as we're going to take that aspect out of it.
You guys have any questions for Scott while he's there? Go ahead, Joel.
Well, I'm still reflecting on the floodway, floodplain issue, and I grant that the design that we're presented with here does in fact show the development occurring on the edge zone out of the floodway, or out of the floodway.
Mhm.
The floodway is being protected, but essentially the entire rest of the southern floodplain is occupied by park lot and buildings, as I look at the map here. I believe that is probably legitimate under our our floodplain ordinance probably should not be. I think the events of the last week in Texas demonstrated that
And New Mexico.
our historic flood, 100-year floods data is probably incorrect. And we will see, even in Moscow, Idaho, have bigger floods than we have historically. But that, I guess, remains in the future for us to deal with that.
Can I speak on
Yeah.
that one, Joel?
Yeah.
So we're required on these plans to show the FEMA floodplains from the 1970s, because that's the published floodplain, big cartoon line that they drew. So as we developed it and we've raised the site, I mean, there's a good 5 or 6 feet from the elevation of the floodwater to the top of this grading, and then the building's even higher than that. So the concerns with this particular development being within the floodplain, we have to show that the published floodplain on the maps, but in reality is it's going to follow the bank there and
Yeah, what
be significantly
what
higher.
may in fact happen is that it raises the level upstream of some future flood.
So the floodway is designed.
Right.
So if you take, the floodway is where the water travels, and that is, the width of that is defined as if you took both sides of the floodplain and squished it and completely filled it up, that would raise 1 foot. So even if you filled up every single square inch outside the floodway, the water would only raise 1 foot. And that's why there's a 2-foot requirement for all the buildings. So if we completely walled off and made that flood, the whole river, the width of the floodway, the water would only raise 1 foot. So if you're 2 feet above it, that keeps you out of there and protects your home. And that's why the insurance is set up that way, because the insurance company obviously doesn't want to pay money. So they make the rules so that they're not paying out. So for us, we're considerably higher, and we've raised that to the point the flood plain and floodway will both be significantly lower than the site. And so the concern, I can see that on a lot of the developments. I mean, you look through Joseph, I mean, that area is flooded since I was a small child. Cleveland Street, all that area floods, and they deal with it every year. There's nothing.
Meadow, yeah. Oh.
Right? All those floods in this development, and they've done a lot more on the rules and regulations that they need to do to prevent that, so that those things don't happen. So you see the floodplain lines on the sheets, but in the reality is, if you go by the elevations, that line is not within this development. There are other concerns you have but that one, I think that's right up my alley, and I can speak on that one all day. The stoves is one
In other words, you have over mitigated. You've gone beyond what's required.
these buildings are going to be
Any
significantly
potential.
higher than the floodplain and floodway. That would not be a concern.
That and our
Question
ordinance
for Mike.
goes a foot
Oh.
above. So typically FEMA baseline is just 1 foot above the base flood elevation. Our ordinance goes 2 feet above base flood elevation for the requirement. So we're doubling already what the requirement is of FEMA. So-
You're exceeding that, aren't you?
Yes.
You're exceeding that even more.
All right, any other questions for
I
Scott?
have a question for Mike.
All right, thanks, Scott.
Hi, Scott.
Yeah, please.
In reading the Park and Recreation Commission, the Park and Facilities Manager recommended to defer and add part of the park dedication to the future whole subdivision. But the Parks and Recreation Commission will consider the recommended deferral on July 24th. So in other words, they're not even going to pay any attention to the Parks and Recreation Commission, because the manager has already recommended to defer it before the meeting even happened. Now, yes, the commission doesn't have any power, but if I were on that commission, I would not be pleased that
So
this was approved.
He makes a recommendation to the commission every time. The commission makes a recommendation on a city council. So this won't go before city council for the recommendation.
and the other thing is, isn't it just like a quarter acre? Just very, very
For the
small.
entire, yeah. This
Yeah,
would just be a slight increase to what was previously already approved to be deferred. I mean, we have this giant park over here that'll be developed into play fields and maybe a school. But there's no, looking at the Parks and Facilities Manager's recommendation, there would be no need to put a small park into one of these properties when you have this large facility over here. That's why his decision and the Parks and Recs Commission's decision previously was to defer that to a stage that would be further to the south into the entire, heart of the property into the future. So.
And the quarter acre for this area that they're asking to be deferred, and probably will be by the commission's recommendation. How big is Otteness? Is it half an acre? I'm just looking for comparison here. 'Cause I know
I mean, you look at, so 43,560 is an acre. So you're looking at, about 13, 14, 15,000 square feet would be, probably honest, maybe a little bit larger than that.
Okay, 'cause Otteness. and you know
With the
Otteness.
with the pathway included in there.
Otteness is very small. So if you cut that in half, you just would have a tiny, tiny, tiny little park there. So I can see why they would defer.
You would
I
probably
just-
be looking at,
wondering why they
the
made-
size of one of these parcels here at the
Recommendation
end
for
would
the
probably be
elementary.
about a quarter acre in size.
It's a small development to squint at the park issue, I mean, okay, we can have a
To me, it was just a-
bureaucratic rule, but this is a big development. There's many acres in the whole development. So I just don't see with a 4 acre piece, my gosh, so fine. It's like somebody's front yard. I'm not
I see
sure
your point,
that's.
Sue. I mean, I noticed it too.
No, my point was that this recommendation was made and we're supposed to approve density with one of these comments but the commission hasn't had a chance to weigh in on it yet, which they probably would approve, but it's just, the other thing I thought was interesting,
Okay, well, stop. Let me close the public hearing.
I'm sorry.
I'm going to close the public hearing and we're going to open it up for discussion. Go
Yes.
ahead.
I'm sorry.
And you're good.
Like my ears are plugged up from this,
No, it's
whatever
fine.
it is. There was, and I appreciate, Mike, where places where they could be allowed so much of a bonus and you either cut it in half or made it smaller. I really appreciate that. But one of the things was that they were going to use xeriscaping for part of a density bonus. And if you look at the picture of the apartments, it's got all these nice little street trees. I don't know any xeriscape things that get that tall or provide any shade. And as Mike said, it's already been zoned and it could be built on that property anyway.
Yes.
And with all my reservations about the snow, and I don't like just 10 feet between two very tall buildings, I don't know if I'd want, I hope they be blank walls, because I wouldn't want to have 10 feet between me and the next neighbor, but that's,
You'd hate to live in Park City.
huh?
You'd hate to live in Park City.
Well, yes, well, at least they have
All
a
the
view.
buildings are 10 feet.
But anyway, and I'm not wowed about the flood zone. And so I'm thinking, okay, they can build what was already approved. And the part of the PUD is so that you can get more density than you would have otherwise. And I'm not sure I'm so wowed about that with 198, with only 6 more parking spaces than are actually required and no parking on the street. You're going to have a residential office. You're going to have customers. I'm just not wowed.
So there's parking on Eddington, just directly across the street right here. So there's parking
In
on
front of
Eddington
somebody
Avenue.
else's house. Yeah,
It's a
well,
public street, so you don't own the parking in front of your house. But Augustine is the only street that doesn't have on-street parking in front of it. But to speak to the density, this is just for the PUD. So the density that's allowed underneath the zone, I have it in my staff report. I think it's 225 221 units. They're proposing 114 here. So that would be the density that would be permitted if you could get enough parking on the site.
So if they built it, what is allowed without a PUD? You're saying that's a higher number?
Correct.
And the parking for that would be where on the original plan?
It would depend upon what the configuration of the unit, I mean, it depends on if you have a studio apartment, whether or not you have a 1-bedroom, whether you have a 2-bedroom. It changes depending upon that.
Is there another plan?
Pardon?
There's an original plan?
Yeah, there's an original plan with it before the PUD, the one that Mr. Gadwal was showing the difference. Mike, can you put up the original zoning approval?
There is no original. This is what's being proposed. There was a neighborhood meeting where they had a conceptual images of what they were planning on doing, and that's changed slightly since they did the neighborhood meeting.
Conceptual images change.
Keep in mind
Yeah.
that these are renderings. They're not going to invest the money into landscape architects, the main architects, until this process goes through. And I think we're kind of picking it apart, but they're renderings. They're not going to invest into the full design until we approve it. Is that correct, Scott?
I would say yes, and also our original estimate, we were looking at this before we went the PUD route.
You might have to come up here so we can hear you, Scott. Sorry.
I can't hear you.
Sorry. I will say, yes, these are renderings, are conceptual. They have the base of roughly what we're doing. Also, when we first looked at this site, we did, going up to the density, we can make buildings bigger and taller and put in more parking, and we can get above or beyond what Mike was saying was the density. With going with the PUD, we've really had to scale it back to the PUD density. So I would say yes, if we wanted to put in more units and parking, that's possible. But
Yeah, I mean,
making it work.
so yeah, what I calculated at before, based upon 4.06 acres, just with the underlying zone, without going through a PUD, you could get 221 dwelling units. That's essentially double what they're proposing here with a PUD.
Would that require more streets?
It would require a lot more parking, but if they did podium, if they decided to do like underground parking or some other parking configuration, they'd be allowed to put that many units on those properties.
Or different building densities between 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 bedrooms. The more bedrooms, the less parking up per unit. So
I saw that it was half what you could do. So, yeah. And
So the density is on this PUD is actually less than what's possible.
It's half of what's possible.
Okay. I feel a lot better now, thank you.
and
Good.
in the 6th and Jackson with Urban Renewal Agency, I remember, I don't remember which developer was, talked about the renderings, and you do not pay for architectural fancy actual renderings until you get approval to go forward, because it's too expensive. And so you have these kind of basic,
Yeah.
just basic kind of things, and they're going to show grass, just to give you because they're conceptual, give you an idea. It's not going to be, not until you get way down the road are you going to get an exact rendering of what the landscape is.
Okay, does anyone have anything else? Any more discussion? Any more questions for Mike? Anything?
I just think that as for years, we searched for ways to get a little density and a little bit of residential office activity around
Collaboration, yeah.
town. And now when we see it, we're going to really pick at this scab. I think it's, I like the direction that it's going, and it appears to me in Eddington, there'll be some more mixed use and just 150 houses that are all the same. I like that density, a variety, a little bit of mixed use. And so I think we've been waiting for it with little red dots on maps for the last 30 years. We seldom see it. And then when we see it, we're acting like it's some kind of it isn't a little red dot that we wanted anymore. I'm sorry, I like it.
Me
My-
too.
So I would like to have, remember neighborhood business, Reese?
What?
Wells? Remember neighborhood business?
Right.
I don't see any neighborhood business here. I would really like that.
Mhm.
Isn't that mixed use?
But that's a wish list.
Well, I think it's
Yeah.
moving in that right
Neighborhood
direction.
business is now called mixed use, basically, and it has mixed use. It's
Yeah, these are
designed
both
by
mixed
Henry.
use zones, so they're both commercial. So neighborhood business would be a little more intensive, but
Yeah, but there's
when we've
several.
done amendments, residential office, for instance, now allows restaurants, I think up to 1,500 square feet and a wide variety of other uses. So we have expanded the commercial uses in residential office. So you could presumably see all those uses here.
It's just got a new name. Got a new name, a little tweaks here and there. So I just, what was it? You could walk to the Steiner bus station in 10 or 15 minutes. And I just wish I could still do that. Take me a lot longer.
Yeah, and I don't think you can bike through the Arboretum.
Well, you're not going.
That's
to
what it
get
says.
Oh, you mean bikes?
People do.
Yeah,
Right.
well, we'll figure that out.
Okay, any more discussion?
Probably a rule against it.
Yeah, I do too.
I know.
Yes.
I know,
I
I
thought
know.
it hit the targets and I liked the description, of why you were doing it. And I thought we're going in the direction we've been talking about. And
Yeah.
The neighborhood meeting, they did ask, would there be any low-income housing? And they said no.
you can't force low income.
Oh, I know. I'm just,
And
Okay.
at least having a variety of houses where some are cheap and smaller, then those are going to be cheaper. So it's a start in
Yeah,
that direction.
I mean, there's all kinds of things that we're not used to. I lived in a studio apartment in New York that didn't have a stove. Hello. Just in case you wanted, there was a convection oven there, but no stove. And we managed to cope with that for a year or so. But these are some of these things are things that we haven't spent a lot of time focusing on here in the West. We all think that everybody deserves a 2,500 square feet, I guess. Anyway, I would make a motion that we accept this proposal and
In its entirety.
without
Yeah.
any other added conditions.
Recommend approval for the proposed plan unit development with no conditions.
Yeah.
I have a motion
Second.
and I have a second. We'll do a roll vote starting with Sue.
excuse me, this is just for the PUD because there is a condition on the preliminary plat.
You're right. There is a stormwater thing.
So are we just voting on the PUD right now?
Everyone handle it, Mike.
You can do them separate or you could combine them and just state the
With the
approval of the
condition?
proposed PUD and approval of the proposed preliminary plat with the condition recommended by staff. You could
Say
state
so
that.
moved.
I would make the whole
Perfect.
salad all together.
So moved.
Yes.
There
Okay.
you go. We'll sell it all together.
Wholesale it all together. We have a motion for that.
The relevant criteria and standards.
Yeah.
That staff.
Well, that's a separate
That
thing.
is separate?
Relevant criteria.
Okay.
Do I have a second on this motion?
Yes.
Okay, Victoria second it. Now we'll start with Sue.
Well, I think most of my concerns have been dealt with, so hopefully they'll be covered when they do the rest. So I'll vote aye.
That's what we hope for. 100%.
I will also vote with a slightly under enthusiastic aye.
Especially on the floodplain.
Aye.
Aye.
I,
I,
Scotty, aye. Okay, motion moved. We go to the next item, which is what? Approved reason statement of relevant criteria and standards for the major planned unit development amendment and preliminary subdivision replat of the Woodbury First Edition subdivision generally located at the Slonaker Drive east of Arborcrest and south of Trail Road within the city of Moscow.
so move.
Mr. Chair, just to clarify, you did direct staff to prepare the RCS on the last one as well.
Yes, thought we did.
it had to be separate.
Well, I thought
Want a
that's what
separate
we're
motion?
doing right now.
Yeah, I think we probably need one more motion to direct staff and then we'll be done with that.
We have a motion to direct staff for RCS.
Yes.
So moved.
So moved for Scotty and seconded by Victoria. So we good for that? Move on.
Got to vote. Yep.
And the approval, oh, we got to
Gotta
vote.
vote.
Sue,
Abstain, I wasn't here.
Joel,
Aye.
oh, aye.
That's this one.
I,
That's for this
This is
meeting.
Woodbury.
No, we're not on Woodbury yet.
Got to
No, we
direct
went
staff
back
to
to the
prepare the
RCS for this-
RCS
this
for
one.
the,
Because we missed.
for this
a piece.
item.
We missed a piece. We're going back. We have to do the.
I was looking at number 4.
Well, we went back to number 3.
Oh,
This is the third item, third action,
The
and number
RCS.
3.
For the RCS. Have staff do the RCS.
Direct staff to prepare the RCS documents.
oh, yes, okay.
Joe had yes, Cole had yes, I had
Aye.
yes,
Yeah.
Nels had yes. Victoria,
Yes.
Scotty?
Aye.
Okay, so we moved on that one. Now we move to the number 4.
One little more comment. This is preliminary. So some of these things should get worked out. I'm good with that.
Okay, you want me to read this again? Approval of the reason statement of relevant criteria and standards number 4 for the major planned unit development amendment and the preliminary subdivision replat of the Woodbury First Edition subdivision generally located north of Slonaker Drive, east of Arborcrest and south Trail within the city of Moscow. What'd you say?
I looked through them and looked fine.
Motion to approve or whatever we do. Aye in a second. Right?
I'll second it. Did you?
I made the motion.
Okay, I'll second.
There's nothing changed, right, Mike? We're good on this?
It's,
Yeah, nothing's
Okay.
changed here.
Okay, so Scotty?
Aye.
I,
Victoria? Nels? Aye.
And this one I abstain.
She abstains. Okay, perfect. Okay, proposed action
Well, I can stop
reports.
coughing, so I'm okay.
Joel, we got a transportation report?
Transportation Commission is meeting tomorrow at 4 o'clock in this room. The agenda is rather sparse. We had a vice chair drop out and we need a replacement. And we're talking about a table at the Moscow Farmers Market.
Nice.
And so far as I know, those are the only agenda items.
Well, we look forward to your report next time, I guess, huh? I guess. Any announcements, Mike?
None from staff, no.
Hey, how about our next meeting? We good for that one? 23rd of July?
I think we'll probably cancel that meeting.
Okay.
So it'll be first meeting in August that we'll have next.
August.
can't be August.
It's close, isn't it? Okay, does anyone have anything else to add? Okay, with that, we will,
Oh, I just wanted to say one thing. We're talking about where you're going to put the snow, and they said that he'll manage it because everybody manages it. On my particular building downtown, I am not allowed to shovel the snow onto the sidewalk. I must pay $50 to block the sidewalk on each end and pay for a truck to come on my sidewalk to shovel the snow into the truck and have it hauled away.
Yeah.
I don't think that's what these people want with the 10 feet between the two 40-foot buildings. But yeah, there's a
that's
method.
what they're going to get.
Huh?
That's what they're going to get, right? I mean, it is what it is. I get it.
Just thought I'd mention it. Yeah, there's a way. It's just expensive.
Okay, with that, we will adjourn. Thank you guys for coming.